A lot of attorneys really focus on search engine optimization, and they really, really shouldn't.
Sure, strategies, sweet success.
So, Christine and I have had scheduling conflicts out the wazoo the last few weeks. So, this is the first time we've been able to record in a couple of weeks. So, we're catching up. What we agreed to talk about today, and what I explained to her is that I've been doing a lot of marketing audits recently where law firms will contact me and say, "Hey, Tiffany, like, we saw your website, we see you on LinkedIn, we love what you talk about. We'd love it if you could review our marketing assets and give us feedback." And so I go through, just to give somebody a quick idea of what I do. I give them instructions on how to give me access to their marketing assets. And that could be anything from Google Analytics, Facebook Business to literally like marketing creatives, their images and graphics and whatnot. They give me access to everything they can. And then I review and draft a report, submit the report, and then schedule a follow up meeting with them. And I also give them a list of action items to complete, if there are any, because sometimes law firms have a really good handle and I don't have a whole lot to tell them except for smaller things. But most of the case, that's not what's happening. We have at least a short list of action items for every law firm to take on. And so, yeah, that's the process of the marketing audit as of right now. And I think Christine and I were going to talk a little bit about that today and what I look for and what kind of feedback I give the law firms.
What you just mentioned is very similar to kind of what I do at work because I have to grade and assess the way that people take phone calls and you have to give feedback and that isn't always easy. So I have a few questions that I've written down. But the first one, do you have some kind of like a scoring guide? Like what's your criteria?
So I have a few benchmarks, I guess is what I call them, for different different performance benchmarks. So for like a law firm, a personal injury law firm's website, I go in and say, and this is just a number I have in my head and written down based on experience, but I go in and say, okay, a personal injury law firm website should get 1,500 visitors from organic traffic each week. And that's where I'm starting. Like, this is a law firm that's doing really good, who's doing good in SEO, and they're getting 1,500 visitors a week. And so I go in and just basically say, like, if we're getting less than that, then there's something wrong or we're not living up to that performance goal. And so I have that for, website metrics. I have it for case metrics. So how many cases are we signing? How many leads we're getting, qualified leads. I have all of these benchmarks and that I'm usually scoring people against those benchmarks. But generally, honestly, like when a law firm reaches out to me and says, like, we want you to do an audit, there's something wrong. They're not signing enough cases or they want to sign more cases. And so they want to know how. And so whether they're reaching my benchmark or whether they're exceeding it, I'm still giving them like feedback on what I think would help them improve their marketing.
What's like what do you think is probably one of the best and worst things that somebody in that situation could focus on? Or does it really like vary depending on what their problem is?
Well, so for personal injury attorneys, the answer for that is like a lot of attorneys really focus on search engine optimization, and they really, really shouldn't. Um, because search engine optimization classically is how well a website will show up when you enter in certain keywords into Google, right? So let's say we're looking for lipstick. I don't know, whenever I'm thinking of examples, lipstick comes to mind. I don't even wear freaking lipstick, but it just always does. So like let's say you Google like lipstick near me, right? And then what shows up for lipstick are websites that have been optimized to rank for that keyword, right? That's what SEO is. Well, so the question becomes like, how often are people going to Google and getting their personal injury attorney's purely from the website rankings. A lot of times, what they see before they see the website rankings is they see the Google business listing. And it's a little bit difficult to explain, but like SEO can include Google business, but like Google business and like how your website shows up in the map pack and what your ratings are, it's separate from SEO. So a lot of law firms will put a lot of money into search engine optimization and making their website rank better, when really what they should be putting like effort into is making their Google business listing rank better, maybe getting more reviews or getting more referrals from former clients. So that's the commonly like what they're doing versus like what they should be doing.
Do you think that there's like a still a good, like a moderate amount, like a level that people could be doing that? Like you don't be like, don't do it altogether, don't spend your time and resources on it, but do it like a little bit, but put most of your effort elsewhere.
So yeah, you should be doing some level of search engine optimization, but like at the same time, like you don't have to have the best optimized website or the best performing website to get a lot of cases. And in fact, there are a lot of law firms who are like referral only who get a ton of cases just from referrals, right? Or they get cases from lead generation, PPC ads. Otherwise, like there are a lot of places to get cases. It doesn't, not all of it comes from SEO, and not even most of it comes from search engine optimization. Most of your leads are coming from, again, Google business or referrals from other clients. But investing enough to where you're writing content each week, each month, you're publishing new articles on your site, those articles, you're not repeating yourself, they're all unique and they're all written for real people and not for robots, if that makes sense. You know, sometimes people write content just to rank better. And if you're writing content just to rank better, you're writing content for, those robots, right?
Yeah, and robots can't give you money.
No, they can't.
I
They
mean,
can't. They can't hire you. Yeah.
yeah, they can't hire you. They can't give you something to actually go and pursue.
Yeah.
So what do you okay, so I know that we've talked a lot about the AdSense, but and then you mentioned a few other avenues as well. Is there one among those that you think stands out the most, that gets the most return on the investment?
So, I mean, anytime that we're marketing to our own list, which is kind of an abstract, like, kind of thought, but like a lot of modern marketers are talking about how important it is to generate or build your own marketing list, like your own email marketing list, just as a very simple example. And so, like, if you can build a list of people who know you, people who like you, who you've helped, whether they've been your clients or not. Maybe they're just somebody you've done free consultation for. Maybe they're just somebody who's downloaded like an ebook from your law firm or watched a free webinar that you did. A lot of times when I'm marketing for law firms, I'm helping them make stuff like that, right? Um, and like they're added to your marketing list. And then at that point, you're hitting them with emails each week. The content is good. They like the emails, so they don't unsubscribe. And then you're sending them print newsletters. You're inviting them to, if you host client dinners, you're inviting them to client dinners to show up and get some free food. I know some of my law firms do that. And it's that kind of marketing where, you're not spending like $50,000 a month in Google PPC. You're spending a lot less. And then you're connecting with real people, building that connection, growing your marketing list, getting more referrals. It's harder to track ROI wise, but it has a bigger payoff.
That makes sense, and I mean, it almost kind of feels like you have to rub elbows with the right groups of people that you
Oh, yeah.
know are gonna have the business and they're gonna generate the opportunity, and then if you are there and you're present and you're someone they're familiar with, they're more inclined to go to you. It depends. I guess it kinda goes back to what we were talking about, like, early a few weeks, like, many, many weeks ago, like, that whole sense of it just depends on what kind of law you are supporting. Because if it's something where it's like business law or, like licenses and working around, business, that kind of clientele, I could see really working for. But if it's something like a personal injury attorney or like car accident cases, you probably would want somebody who's going to go Google something rather than refer back to somebody that they know. And also, if you're in that business world, you can kind of like tier up, so to speak. You can rub elbows with the starter businesses, or you can rub elbows with the oil companies. Just kind of depending.
One thing I was gonna say though, because you started talking about like if you're in business, maybe referrals, is the way to go. Whereas if you're in personal injury, like they might more likely go to Google. And I mean that is true to a certain degree. Like, because there are certain classes of people. Like if you're a high income earner, like you're not Googling for attorneys, right?
Yeah.
You know an attorney. You're gonna reach out and talk to your network and find, an attorney who suits your needs, right? And so like for law firms that are targeting like high income categories, and sometimes like even a personal injury law firm can target like that high income category, right? And they can just say like we only do personal injury for the rich. Some people do that. And in that case, like even they become, more of a referral based law firm. And in truth, like I think all of these practice areas are more referral based than I think they might seem from the outside because even with personal injury, I think the data shows like only like 30% of people actually Google when they search for an attorney. Like the the other share of the pie, people always ask somebody else, like, do you know another attorney? So that's another reason why I say like, okay, like SEO is probably not that big of a deal for your firm because like even for personal injury firms, even for like your run of the mill personal injury firms, like, we're only seeing, like, a small section of people actually, like, take it to Google, um, whereas, like, most people actually are referred or they come from, another source on the internet, like social media or Bing or DuckDuckGo. Um, like, I think most attorneys would be surprised, like, how few people visit their website before they actually call the firm. So referrals are really important. I mean, no matter who you're targeting, truly. Yeah.
Well, having an outside resource such as yourself, somebody who can kind of assess the outline of your marketing strategy, your plan, like the firm's marketing plan, having somebody who's from the outside coming in and kind of doing that feasibility study, if you will, um, kind of
Yeah.
there's so many good things to having a third party opinion. What are some things that you think, in your opinion, are the best reasons to have someone assess and kind of do that audit on your strategy?
One, if you're working with a vendor of any kind, like if you're working with a search engine optimization vendor or a PPC vendor or, any type, of course, if you're working with an SEO vendor and you ask them, is SEO important? They're always going to say yes, right? And so you want somebody from the outside coming in and actually reviewing like the work that they've done, your law firm, where you're at, because if what is the saying like when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. When you're an SEO company, everything can be solved with SEO, but really that's not the case in legal marketing most of the time, right? Um, and so like, and then just having like somebody who knows legal marketing because and like Kristine, like I don't know how much people remember back to episode 1 when I introduced you and your credentials, but like you went to college for business and marketing, right? Graduated, you have a bachelor's, right? Hope I'm
Yes.
not putting you on the spot. Did you drop out? No, you have a bachelor's,
Oh
right?
no, I
Yeah.
graduated. I have a bachelor's entrepreneurship, so they have a little bit of everything. So I
Yeah.
didn't really like fine tune any one specific study, but I do have a very good basic general knowledge of all of it and how it can all work together.
Yeah. So you have a entrepreneurship business degree. So you already knew this stuff before you even started doing this podcast with me, but you probably like learned and realized like how different legal marketing is from like the marketing like we were taught in school, or at least that I was taught in school. Like I didn't learn a lot of this stuff in my marketing colleges when when I was in college, right? And so it's very, very different. So having somebody like me who's been in the industry for a while, it's been like 10 years for me, who understands how legal marketing works and not how like lipstick marketing works. That's my example for some reason. Who
All
can
about
like
lipstick today.
it's all about lipstick today. I saw the lipstick. You know, a third party opinion from somebody like me can give you like real insight on like not just like where you're at, but like where to go next. Cause there's so many, there's so many places to take legal marketing. And then these lawyers are getting pitched constantly on different marketing programs, and not all of them are going to work. And it's just like a constant onslaught of just sales calls for them. And so, like, hearing somebody say, like, this is good, this is not so important, that's refreshing for a lot of these attorneys.
I always have found benefit in getting feedback from an outside source because you don't know where your blind spots are at. So you got to have somebody that can kind of like check your perimeter and look for any weak parts of the wall, so to speak. You got
Yeah.
to know where your blind spots are at, where things could leak through that you're not expecting. Kind of have that like vertigo sense, like, oh, everything's great. I've got a great plan. And suddenly the rug's pulled out from under you. So to help avoid that, mitigate that. And then also you mentioned something else that made me think there's a lot of things that maybe I could be like, yeah, I know about that, but I don't know enough about that I'm willing to go try it. So I need somebody who has tried it before, not only maybe for themselves, but also helped others go through it as well and kind of take those first steps because everything seems more daunting and scary before you actually take the moves to go after it. And I think that's why a lot of people make excuses, to be honest. I think a lot of people go like, yeah, well, that's not really for me, or oh, I don't really need that when they do. But what they're really saying is, I don't know the first thing about doing that, and I'm afraid of failing. So I'm not even
Well,
gonna try.
just to extend that a little bit, because I was thinking about that earlier today too. Because there are some things like I feel like I can't get started on. Like it's been on my to do list for like 2 or 3 weeks, and it might only take me half an hour, maybe even less than that to get done. And then I'm just like procrastinating. And then like a lot of times, like the common thing, because there are some shit that I don't procrastinate. There's some things I do right away. And the common thing with the stuff that I put off is like I don't know what my first step is, or I don't know what my first two steps are. Now, if I take the second to think about it, it's like, okay, what do I have to do here? Oh, I gotta call this person. Then the project is much less daunting or much more familiar. I don't know what mental thing happens there, but once I know the first step, I'm more likely to get the rest of it done. And I think maybe that's where a lot of these law firms are, just any business owner. You need to do blank. You need to do referral marketing. But you don't know like the first step. You don't know how to begin. Or you need to do like Facebook ads, but you don't know like how to begin. And that's why I'm having like an auditor, somebody to audit your marketing can help because they can give you like those first steps.
And I think personality makes all the difference because that person who's going to be there supporting you in those first steps, those baby steps where you're really not confident and you're very shaky in your own ability and you're afraid of misstepping, you got to have somebody that can be gracious with you and
Yeah.
somebody that is willing to acknowledge that it's hard or it's scary or maybe you don't feel like it's the right thing at that time, but it really like convincing them that it is. And that's actually leading into the next set of questions that I have about the way that you give feedback. So, I mean, I'm assuming that you've done a few consulting kind of jobs with different types of firms, right? Yes.
Thousands at this point. Yeah.
Thousands. Again. So whenever you give feedback, now I have, I'm going to let you go. I'm going to let you take this one, but I have where I'm at, we have a model that we follow. So I'm curious to hear from your side. Once you do these audits and you get a list of like, okay, this is what I would recommend that they do. This is what I would recommend they stop doing. And this is what I would recommend they change. If you kind of like get your list of what those things are, how do you deliver the message effectively?
So a lot of times, like I have two ways I might deliver this message because every attorney is different. I'm either most of the time I'm going to try to do it like Zoom meeting or in person face to face meeting because there's a lot I can like contextualize and explain for them. Because like everyone gets a little bit defensive when you get like negative feedback. And so like being there with them to contextualize the feedback they're getting and it's funny like you were mentioning earlier, like, I bet these, they're unsure of what to do next. And in that case, a lot of times it's not necessarily the attorneys. Like, even if whether they do or they don't, a lot of times the attorneys feel pretty confident in what they need to do next. It's their marketing directors who need the most help, right? It's their marketing directors who need a little more hand holding because the attorneys don't know how to get it done. They just know what they want to get done. I do a meeting with them via Zoom and we talk. We just talk about what their goals are. We talk about what kind of marketing they want to do, what they're doing right now. And usually to start with, like they all know that there's something wrong. They're not getting as many cases as they'd like to get, or there's like a dramatic drop off and there's just been a slowdown in leads. And that obviously starts to like worry them, right? Because I mean, we're all worried about paying our employees' paychecks, right? Um, and paying our own paychecks, I'm sure. Um, anyway, so like we're all worried about that, but like also like even myself, like I'm kind of proud of the business I built and the website I set up. I know it's not great, but damn it, like that's my business and my website. I love it. So putting it out there to get feedback on it, like I always get in that first meeting a little bit of confidence. Like you're probably not going to find that much wrong with my site. And so inevitably I usually do. I mean, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I go on these marketing audits and I'm like, hey, your website's doing great. Actually, one of my clients that I worked with for like the last 2 years now, our relationship started because he reached out to me to do a marketing audit and I looked at his website and I was like, it's dope. It's great. Like, what, you actually are doing fantastic. Like your website isn't the problem. And then, he hired me as a fractional CMO and our relationship went from there. But, like, sometimes that's the case, but most of the time it's not. And so, like, doing that face-to-face meeting, I can explain to them, like, "Look, this is good. there are some good parts to this, but you need to work on this." And also showing them the numbers and the data because that's one thing to tell an attorney, like, hey, your website isn't performing as good as it should be. And that's one thing. But then it's another thing to show a website that's performing really well and comparing their numbers to this other website's numbers. You can see the delta and it becomes a lot more real. And also it becomes more real and it becomes like more urgent to take action to fix the site, right? And so like I have to like walk the line between like protecting egos, making sure nobody walks away with hurt feelings, like Tiffany just thrashed my site and my marketing, versus like, look, we need to get real though. These things need to get fixed. You need to talk to this person, giving them action items. So walking that line and just, I mean, I wish I could give like more concrete tips on how I do this, but it's just like trying to feel out the person and making sure that they feel like one, I took a close look, that I actually cared, and that I dug into the numbers to like find the things that were wrong that they could potentially fix. And then like two, like I'm not just trying to make somebody feel bad. I'm not trying to make their marketing director feel bad because they redesigned the website last year and they're really proud of it. So it's a tightrope, but I don't ultimately I err on telling them what they need to hear because, you can't build a business by not hurting anyone's feelings. So you just have to you have to be honest.
They say to make an omelet, you got to crack a few eggs.
It's cracking. Um,
Well, what's really interesting, because I told you before I asked that question that I have a model that we follow it where I'm employed at. And what you outlined is exactly that model. So we call it GROW, GROW. You start with your goals and you ask questions throughout the entire process. So if you're starting with your goals, you say, hey, what do you want to achieve? I want you to be super profitable and have a successful, thriving business. But what do you want out of my time, out of your time with me? What you're paying me for? What do you want out of this? So you start with your goals. And then once you have that outlined, you always reference back to the goal. Is that going to
Yeah.
get us here? We can do this. Will that get us here? How do you feel about this? Will that get you here? So then you go into your reality. So you got your GR reality.
Okay.
Here's where you're at. If this is where you want to be, here's where you're actually at. Here are your numbers. Here's your data. Here's your stats. Here's what's working. Here's what's not. Here's what got us here so far. And you ask questions. Is there anything I'm missing? What else would you add to this?
Yeah.
Would you agree that this is correct data? Would you agree that this is not reaching your goal? Okay, the reality, and that's where you mentioned they know that something's wrong. So, yes, your previous, what got you here, is not reaching your goal. So now we go into O, GRO, options. What options do we have on the table? No wrong answers, no red lights. Everything goes. Put it all out there. Let's just brainstorm until our heads hurt. What could feasibly be done about this? And you ask questions again. What are you comfortable with? What have you tried before? What do you believe in? Is that going to help you reach your goal? Do you think that this is going to get you to where you want to be? Is this different than what didn't work before? And then you go into the W part of it, GROW, way forward. That's where it gets to be all on them. And they're the ones paying the money for it. They're the ones that got to do the plan and take the action. I can't do it for you. I can tell you what you can choose to do if you want to be successful. So, what do you want your way forward to look like? Is that going to get you to your goal?
Yeah. I'm surprised. I'm surprised. I felt like I was rambling. Like you actually made my answer sound pretty shit.
I,
Um.
I love it because it's so genuine from you. Mine is very scripted, which is also genuine, but I have a very defined process that I've taken many hours of training to understand and how you can fit it in anything that you do in life. This process actually helped improve my communication with a lot of people outside of where I work.
Yeah. Um. So one thing you mentioned that I did, I think I might have skipped over, but it's the asking question. Basically, asking the "Do you understand?" question, which I hate putting it like that. I never like. Do you get this? So you following me? Like I feels a little condescending. So I
Can
was
we
trying to
count what
like,
I'm putting down?
yeah, I smell what I'm stepping in. I try to like lean into it a little bit easier than that, but like it's important to like stop and say like, hey, you are getting 300 organic visitors each week. You should be getting 1,500. Do you have any questions?
Yeah.
Because,
Does that make
like,
sense?
does
Why
that
is
make
that
sense?
happening?
And then,
And
like,
one thing that I ask is, are you with me? Are you with
you,
me?
yeah. And what I find though, like, I usually ask the first time, like, do you understand? You get this? And like, the response is, and then, like, if I let the silence carry for a few seconds, then they'll be like, "What is organic traffic?" And it's like, "I'm glad you asked. That's very important for
Oh.
you to know." And so, like, I explained to him that. Um, but like, yeah, because I it's important, like, it's easy, I think, when you're in a meeting and you see a graph and it's like you follow and you do, but at the same time, it's like, do I like interrupt? Is this important? It is important. Understanding kind of some of these details is important. Because, like, in the example I just gave about organic traffic, your SEO company might not be telling you there's a difference between organic traffic and direct traffic. They just might be counting it all together. And so you're hearing very different numbers from me that you're hearing from your SEO company. And all of a sudden, it paints a different picture. So, like,
One thing that we do to, because I run into that all the time. Do you understand what an installment plan is? Yes. No, you don't. So I always ask, I'm like, what does this mean to you?
yeah,
How do
what
you
does this
define
mean to
that?
you? Yeah, okay, that's a good one. I need to ask that. What does this mean to you? Yeah, okay, that's a good one. Um, Yeah, because, like, making sure that they understand the feedback that I'm giving them is really, really important. And, like, sometimes there's a knowledge gap there. They're attorneys, they're not marketers, they're not web developers. They don't inherently understand what organic traffic is and what direct traffic is. Um, so explaining that stuff to them. But I think what's more important to the attorneys, because a lot of times they're taking this report and they're giving it to their marketing director, is basically that way forward in that action plan. Because without it, the report's effectively useless. It's just me like nitpicking and finding issues with their site. Um, and I guess like I feel like the attorneys could themselves like one like either loop their marketing director into the process earlier because I sometimes I get these I'm doing these audits and the marketing director doesn't know or their marketer doesn't know.
There you
And
go.
I know.
I mean, the person who's not involved.
Well, and I mean, I always feel bad because I'm like, okay, like it's usually not anything the marketing director themselves are doing. It's usually like the law firm isn't investing enough in this type of marketing or their budget is $0 or something else. Like it's usually not their fault. But anyway. But I'm either doing these with the marketing director's knowledge or without the marketing director's knowledge. And when I'm doing it without the marketing director's knowledge, like, so if the marketing director comes in late in the process, like all of a sudden I'm getting information from them that I didn't get from the attorney that like completely reframes all of these numbers and this information that I'm looking at. So it's important, like, to include them in the process, to talk with them, to like listen to them because like they have frankly, like the marketing directors have a lot more and better information about the marketing than the attorneys. And hopefully
They
that's,
need a seat at the table. They need their voice to be heard. If you're
yeah.
going to be the one carrying out the plan, you got to believe in it. Otherwise, you're just checking off a task list and it doesn't mean anything. And something that is done with heart and meaning and purpose and intention is going to be so much more successful than anything that I've ever been told to do.
Well, and just imagine, if you will, like not you, Christine, but the listener. So, dear listener, imagine if you will, like you're a marketing director, you make $80,000 a year, and you work for a law firm, a singular law firm, and all of a sudden the attorney sends you an email, comes in your office and says, "Hey, we had an outside person audit our marketing, and they sent us back this report, and here are the action items. I want you to execute on these action items." And you look at that and you're like, some of the advice doesn't make sense because you know stuff the attorney doesn't know. Some of the advice, you have no idea how to begin. Like, you're just like, wow, I've never done anything like that. And also, like, there's that. There's you looking at this report and just like try to figure out what to do next. And then there's also like your boss went and got an audit behind your back. You weren't, you weren't able to volunteer the information that you feel like is important to this report. Is your job on the line? Is your boss unhappy with what you're doing? And a lot of times, like, that's not the case. Like, it's not because the person wasn't earmarked to be replaced. It's just the attorney wanted like an outside clean opinion or something. I don't know. But imagine that. Like, imagine that and going through that. Now, like, stop and imagine like your law firm owner came to you and said, "Hey, I heard about this person. They do marketing audits for law firms. They've been doing this for 10 years. I want them to look at our stuff and give us an action plan, some things that we can implement over the next 3 months. And I want you to talk with them because you have important information and you're going to be implementing this stuff." And then you meet with me and the attorney. I'm able to take in all this information. You feel happy and secure that this isn't like a play to replace you. I'm just here to do an audit. You get my feedback. We meet, exchange emails. Um, and just at the end of the process, when you get that action items, like you have me or the auditor, somebody you can go and talk to and say, like, how do I get started with this? Or why am I doing this again? And you're more like committed to the process. Whereas that first marketer probably isn't going to do anything on that action item list because, I mean, they're defensive, resentful, a lot of negative emotions there. So, yeah, include the marketing director on the process.
It's so funny because this company that I work for, we have a certain set of internal values. One of them is called include each other. Another one is connecting the vision. So you got to include the people that are going to carry out the plan, number one, and you have to effectively connect the vision, the why behind why you're doing it. Hey, and then that brings you back to that grow model. I'm doing this because I want you to be just as successful as I want myself to be.
Yeah.
Don't we all want that? Hey, we have this option over here. How do you feel about that? Is this something that we can tackle together? Are you with me?
Yeah. And, for these law firms, like, Well, I don't know why you made me think of this, but like your marketing director can absolutely do this stuff. They can execute on a lot of these action items, and they're just capable and all this good stuff. And it's okay just to look at them and tell them like you need to do this stuff. But it's also, also like include them in the process and hear their voice. Like I don't know, it's like a weird leadership fine line to walk that I'm still learning. Because like having to like delegate and assign things to people and look at it as like, you do this, you do this.
You
Like,
know, one of the best things that gets stuff done is empowerment.
yeah,
And that's like, because I lead I have 50 people under my hierarchy alone. I'm one of 11 different people that have 50 people under them as well. So we're like this 11, a group of 11 of us, and we have to like put our heads together, and it's either going to be we are the bosses behind the desk cracking the whip, telling people what to do and having and experiencing burnout left and right, and then griping about why nobody wants to get anything done, or we can flip the script and get out in front of them and empower them. Everybody wants to feel like they're a part of a club. That VIP access into your club is all it takes to get people motivated enough to want to do something.
yeah.
Hey, we have a really high standard over here and it takes hard work, but I'm right there with you and we're going to do this together and I'm going to high five the shit out of you along the way. And we're going to celebrate these achievements together because I'm working hard and you're working hard. Let's go.
See, some of the best leaders that I've worked with, they do that. They're very empowering and they give praise. And I mean, they give praise where praise is due. It's not just like empty, like, I love you, I love working with you. And that person was done like fuck all in the last like 3 weeks. But they're very, they give praise and good feedback. They're thoughtful about who gets it. But also like they're the ones that have like, if things aren't getting done, they're not gonna bullshit about that thing not getting done. If you're not hitting that marker or getting that action item done, I guess when I'm bringing this up, and I'm trying to find a good way to, like, insert this in the conversation, but, like, if you're working with a marketing director who, like, you do all the right things, you empower them, you encourage them, but they get a list of action items, from you or from any auditor, and they just don't execute on those things, like, you as the attorney, like, understand, like, the action items, like, at least the action items I give law firms are, like, doable for most marketing directors. If they have it, experience as a marketer, they should be able to complete these. And so it's important to, one, like, empower and encourage them, but also to, like, set expectations that I expect you to, like, tick the boxes and get this stuff done and advance this project and not just, 'cause I feel like a lot of these law firms just have these issues with their marketing directors or not even their marketing directors, but their marketers, like, not getting enough done. And that's either because, like, they're, 1, not seeing the work getting done, and so, like, it's, kind of object permanence, but instead with, like, task and stuff, like, they don't see it, it's not happening.
Made a really good point though, setting your expectations. And that's something that like you are speaking my language right now. Like what I do, and then I just got this new team. This is a perfect example. So I have 4 people directly under me. They're my coaches, and each one of them can hold up to 12 agents. And then I also have 2 assistant coaches, and then I have what we call like a batting coach, like they're kind of like getting their first taste of support and leadership. So I have this group of leaders and they are supposed to go lead my front line. So this new group of leaders, today's day 1 where they're all working together. I was there yesterday cleaning by myself. Today, they're all there and I'm here. And I want them to do that because I want them to bond and I want them to be the cool kids helping out the front line, taking the grenades right there in the trenches with the rest of them. But I it comes with I want them to know how I'm going to inspect them. I want to set a very clear expectation that way there's no surprises. I want to be the most predictable person that they've ever worked with. That way they know exactly what I expect from them and what they can do to be successful and how I'm going to inspect it. So we actually had that meeting 2 weeks ago. So today is day 1 of this new team. I did all of that with them far, like already. And for these last 2 weeks, I've had a chat. We've all been talking and communicating, setting out these standards, role playing ideas, talking about, well, what if this situation? How do I handle this? What would you do here? How do I communicate this? And so we've been getting to know that how that expectation is going to carry out. That way, day one, I can comfortably be here and not have to be there, and I'm comfortable letting them take the reins already from
Yeah.
jump.
Um, and it's my fault. We're getting off the marketing audit thing and kind of going
Yeah,
back to like KPIs and measuring people. But I want to stay here because like, I did a talk like a couple weeks ago. And immediately after I did this talk, an attorney took me aside and was talking to me about, basically managing their marketing director and setting expectations. And they're asking me a lot of questions like, do I measure them based on the return on investment that they generate? Basically, the attorney was saying, like, do I measure this marketing employee based on the success of the marketing that they implement? And or do I measure them on this and this and this? And like, at least for marketing, like one, like it's very hard to measure people very precisely on output like that, like ROI versus like, there's a big disconnect between like what they're doing each day and then also like what happens when a case is finally signed and settled. And then personal injury attorneys should know that like from the time a case is signed to when it is eventually like settled, there's like a long like time drag. And so like doing this like return on investment calculation, you're basically either predicting how a case will settle and assuming that you'll win it as an attorney, or you're waiting a long time, like, several months, sometimes several years to determine the ROI of what your employee is doing. And like, as I'm explaining it, I hope you understand how like crazy and complicated that sounds. So like, don't measure your employees on that because it's insane. It's hard to measure. Like measure your marketing employees by one, like things that are simple, like that both people can understand. You need to send out one email newsletter each week. You need to post on social media each day. You need to, I'm trying to think of something else we do in our program. You need to implement 3 marketing campaigns each quarter. These are things that like, you know, they're not like based on return on investment. Cause I mean, we're talking about what an employee does day to day. Like that doesn't even make sense to begin with. So like we're measuring them by their output. Like, what are you doing? Like, what are you coming in the office and delivering? Because like honestly, like if you said you wanted to measure, if you wanted to measure a marketing employee by ROI, it's entirely possible for somebody to step into that role, totally suck as a marketer, never get anything done. But because you're a great attorney and you've done like good job networking, you get a ton of referrals. Your signed cases keep on climbing, your ROI keeps on going up, and all of it's being attributed to this employee who's doing nothing. Like you have to set some standards, measure them on their output. What do they actually do?
so you mentioned two things that I can relate with very strongly. The first one is you got to go after the behavior, not the number. The number will follow. The number should follow. If the behavior is accurate, if the behavior is correct and consistent and thorough and honest and good, if the behavior is good, you'll see the number. Don't chase the number. Don't just be like, I'm going to wait for the number to go up. Then, just like you said, there could be a flux in the market somewhere. Something happened, totally unattributed. But then it's like, oh, well, the number went up. That must mean you're good. You go after the behavior. And like you said, have a set standard. Just like with my coaches, we have a certain number of calls that we listen to every single week. All of us do. And honestly, like if our number goes up and we didn't listen to all of our calls, I'm scared for what the next week is going to look like. So I'm always chasing the behavior. Don't chase the number. And then the second thing is you do have to kind of know a little bit about your business. You know, you can't
Yeah.
just be like, I hired this marketing director. Numbers went up. You're a good director. It doesn't work like that. You have to know, what do I want them to do and why do I want them to do it? So you do kind of have to look into the business, into the marketing side a little bit yourself as the firm owner.
Well, and that's honestly how I get hired a lot as a fractional CMO because I mean, that's why a lot of businesses have a chief marketing officer because it's their job to know what the marketing department is doing and how all of it's connected. Because it's a lot for like one like if if you're an if you are an attorney and you own a law firm and you're working cases and you're trying to build a business and you're managing employees, like it's entirely reasonable for you to get out of touch with what your marketing department is doing. Okay, like that's perfectly reasonable. That's why a lot of law firms have a marketing director or CMO, right? Is that's what's it's their job to know that stuff. But it is important for you to be in touch with it. Like it is important for the business owner to be in touch with it. And I mean, I know this from my perspective as being a business owner, because there are so many things that if I get out of touch with, get awry really fast. Like if it's been a while since I looked at my website, I'm kind of scared to open up the website and look at it. And maybe I shouldn't be. Like at some point, growing my business, I'll be able to hire and keep great talent. And I've kept the same employee I've hired since the first employee I've hired is still working with me, so I haven't had to replace anyone. Yeah. But at a certain level, the ideal is to grow your business to a point where you don't have to look at these things all the time. So you hire expert talent and whatnot. But I mean, there's never a point where you get to be like out of touch. I think until you're ready to sell the business, and then you can kind of be like, I don't care.
You know,
But like,
you made that point. It's funny. I just had a relatable situation happen earlier this week. Somebody pulled me aside with a question, like a frontline person had a question, and I was like, "Huh? I don't know what." Like, if I was a coach or if I was a senior at the time, oh, I probably would have had that by heart. But I trust the process. I trust the process that we already have in place. And I was like, I don't know the answer. So let's go to our resources and find out. And we found it and everything was good. And I felt like a winner because I trusted that process. But it sounds like something kind of similar in your situation. If you have a process already in place that you can trust, you don't have to know all the answers.
well, and yeah, you don't have to know, and you have to build those processes too. You can't just like assume that they'll into existence. Like I've seen so many businesses try to build their employee handbooks. I mean, try and succeed, like, but the process is always like grueling, and we're always setting the standards. I mean, it's something that you have to do. It just doesn't happen. So you have to set the processes and all of that, and then you have to trust them.
You mentioned earlier performance benchmarks. So is there, like, certain metrics? Like, I know we talked just a minute ago about not following the numbers, but you gotta know the numbers. So, is there maybe, like, and you don't wanna overwhelm yourself with all those numbers, with everything that's out there. So, is there maybe a certain like, based on the audits that you've done and the things that work, the things that don't work, with all the options that are out there, is there something that you would recommend that people do follow and pay attention to numbers-wise?
Yeah. So I have so what I do for my fractional CMO clients, and this is just for my fractional CMO clients. I don't set this up as a part of the audits that I do. But I keep KPI dashboards and they're pretty cool. It's actually automated. So like every time I open it up, the data refreshes and I can change the date range and see all these numbers. And I'm bragging about it. Humble bragging. It's really cool. I love this fucking dashboard. I'm not kidding. Anyway, so on this dashboard, I'm tracking a few key things. Like one, and this is obvious, but how many cases did we sign? Yeah, that's pretty simple, right? And then I'm tracking total leads, and this is like anyone who calls the law firm, fills out a contact form, or submits a chat. So that's a lead basically. And then we have qualified leads, which are basically it's a lead with a case that meets the minimum require criteria for a case we would take. Because law firms get a ton of phone calls from people who are leads, but not with cases they would take, either because they're crazy or they're calling the wrong law firm. So we have to make the distinction between total leads and then the leads that are actually good. Um, and then total calls, unique calls in most cases, because we don't want to count, adjusters who call the law firm more than once. where we can, we try to segment it to be like first time people have called us, and we're only counting one time that they've called us each week. And then I mentioned this a few times so far in the podcast, but I also track organic traffic. And organic traffic is traffic that comes from Google search, Bing search, DuckDuckGo, any other search engine that might come up, basically through organic search. Um, and those are the big ones. Like, honestly, in these dashboards, like I have a lot of things that I'm tracking, like marketing sources, how people contacted us, sign cases by source, like if we're signing cases, where are they coming from? And then I have like even more specific KPI metrics for things like how our website is doing, how Google Business is doing. And so like I maintain these dashboards for my clients. And then I also look at pretty much all these same metrics when I do an audit. So I'm looking at all of the numbers I mentioned, plus like 20,000 others that I'm not mentioning. And I don't cover like each and every like metric that I look at in these audits most of the time. A lot of times, like I'm looking at significant ones. So if the website traffic is meeting my benchmark, I'm just going to say, like, your website traffic looks great. Here's some content ideas that might get you started for the next few weeks. Um, but otherwise, I don't dedicate like a huge chunk of time to it. And I focus where I see like the most issues, like your Google business listing isn't verified, the address isn't correct, you need to fix that right away. And I mean that's obviously a big problem. But I look at the big ones. I try to prioritize the big problems that are quick to fix, then the big problems that'll take longer to fix, and then the smaller problems kind of come after that.
That's a perfect answer. Oh my gosh. Like I was wondering, like, this model, this KPI model you mentioned, is this what you use as a platform for your audit? And it sounds like it is. So is this something that anyone can be using, or is this kind of something that you built?
So I mean, like the tools that I use to make this KPI dashboard, like anyone could use. Like, so I'll tell everyone it's Looker Studio, which is a Google product, and it's free. Zapier, which is a middleware, which will connect one program to another program, that's not free, but I used it to set this up. And then Google Sheets, and then a program called Lead Docket, which is basically feeding data into my dashboard. So I'm using this dashboard. So I'm connecting all of these programs to make my dashboard. So it's kind of a custom build, honestly. But
Okay.
if you know how to connect all these tools, anyone can make something similar. But this is something specific I make for my clients.
See, and that's another thing too. This is, I think, the second time we mentioned this in this podcast alone. Having the right marketing consultant means everything, because you could get somebody that sits down, doesn't know how to give feedback. They're all ego. They have no KPI tools. They're just going off their personal opinion, and they spout out a bunch of crap to your face, and then they make you feel terrible, take your money, and leave. Whereas you, on the other hand, you are coming at it not from a place of ego, not from just your opinion. It's your expert, experienced opinion. It's your insight. And it's not your personal ego talking. This is what the data is saying. I'm just the vessel to communicate it to you.
Yeah, I try to keep my reviews as objective as possible. And frankly, like I had a law firm reach out to me, and the audit probably wasn't what they were expecting, because in our initial meeting they talked a lot about their brand, the colors on their website, the design of their website, all of which was, pretty average. Like their brands look, good. It didn't look bad. Yeah, and most law firm brands look good, though it's average, I guess. So a lot of those things, like I don't really pay attention to, because like I try to use this example. Like if somebody Googles your law firm and sees you have I'm trying to think of a good number, 120 5-star reviews, maybe a few bad ones, but most of your reviews are bad. And then they see that you handle the cases that they take. And then somebody that you work with recommended your law firm. And then they go to your site and your website looks like throw up. It looks like freaking garbage. Like you set it up with MySpace back in. They're probably not going to care. Like honestly, like I've seen ugly websites perform. So, like, the design and the look of your brand, like, I mean, it matters. It matters, it definitely matters. And then there are some instances where I'm like, I might look at that ugly website and be like, you need a facelift. We can do better. People are already coming here. Let's at least make a pretty website, right? But that's not necessarily what I focus on. Like I try to focus on like the objective markers, the things that I can measure. And there's a lot of things that we can measure. And I don't need to tell you your brand sucks. Like I can pull the data and say, here's the data showing your brand sucks. So I try to focus on that. Or and then I try not to tell them their brand sucks too. But
I sometimes, because whenever I have a team and like there's somebody on the team isn't doing so hot that month, no, but no, there might be a plethora of things happening in their personal life. The last thing they want to do is come into work and be like, "Yeah, I'm a piece of crap here too." So what I do, I mean, it's not like they are or anything, but it's the way people feel about themselves. So what I do is I just kind of put up their numbers, and I'm just like, that ain't pretty. And then I put up what they're doing because I audit their behaviors, and I put up their behavior report. And I'm like, do you think you could be doing something a little bit better here? Like, if
yeah.
you don't like what you see up there, what can we do differently here? And they're usually the ones that are like, "Oh, yeah, I'm not even paying attention. Clearly, I need to be doing this thing." And then we kind of go like, "What's our way forward gonna look like?" But it really is just kind of like putting up the reality, and that's what that grow model, like your goal, your option, or goal reality. You put up the reality, and you're like, "What can we do about this?" And then they usually like people are typically like they're smart. I mean, some you don't know what you don't know until you don't know it. But if you know something and you see it, sometimes it'll just click, and you can get people going in the right direction much quicker if they self-discover that thing for themselves. And sometimes it's just sitting right in front of them, and all they need to do is just like have their, "Oh, there it is."
Yeah. And like for me, like marketing is very abstract until you bring data into the picture. Cause like in college, I remember learning about design and I remember learning about like setting up newsletters and how to make it look pretty, how to make it look professional. But like it wasn't until like I actually like got a real job in marketing where I'm like, oh, like we can measure this stuff. And that's actually what made me like stick with marketing, I think, is like the idea that it's not all like I make a pretty logo and put it out there and hope it works. We can actually like, track things to see how that logo does. Like, and that's exciting and that's fun. And that's a lot easier to wrap your mind around than just the aesthetics of something. And so, yeah, I mean, focus on the data because, like, and then, like, also, like, try to take your ego out of it. You, the attorney, you, the marketing director. Like, the way I try to explain it to people, like, if you have a successful career in marketing, let's just say you make one new piece of marketing every day, like in your career, and that's not like a high benchmark. You do one thing each day, and whatever that is, maybe it's an article, maybe it's a creative over your career, you're probably going to make thousands of marketing things, right? Do you really need to spend like 3 or 4 months like workshopping and focusing on this one thing when you can just put it out there and test it? And so like I'm a huge advocate of like just make it and test it, make it and test it. If it's good, we'll see. If it's good, we'll measure and we'll just repeat the good stuff. Um,
My gosh, that is like the precipice of of success. Like if you can grasp your head around that idea, don't be afraid. Just try it. Just give it a shot. You're gonna gain more with the information that comes out of it, good or bad, than what you're gonna spend into putting it out there. Because you can work for months extensively over a long period of time and dump a lot of money into something and it not work. Or you can just put something out there, and then you can get some information, maybe tweak it, get some more information, make a little bit more change, get some more information, and through that process, you're gonna get a lot more back through experience, through visibility, through just confidence. Like you're
yeah,
gonna there's so much to be gained from just taking small steps. You said earlier, keeping it simple, that is everything. Because another thing that really scares people away from taking those steps is if it looks complicated, if it looks unobtainable. They're gonna spin their wheels trying to refine it and finding a way to make it easy. Months go by and it's finally time to put it out there and you don't even feel good about it and it doesn't get you anything that you wanted. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
I mean, you said a bunch of things there, but one thing I'll maybe 2 things I'll hone in on, and then we'll close out the podcast. Like, 1, like, simple is very important in marketing, because, I mean, it's a lot of things. Like, simple, ideas work. Like, the simpler your idea, the easier it is to explain, the more likely that marketing idea is just going to work. And then like look at something like logos for like major brands. Like look at the Starbucks logo over time and how all of these logos trend towards simplicity and like just getting this refined, streamlined look. And also simplicity is important in your customers just like understanding what the fuck your website's about. Like if they show up on your website and it's just like wall of text and like decision trees and complicated, they're more likely gonna be like, "No." Like, I'll you look like a lot, and I'll go find another law firm. But, they arrive on the law firm's website, and it's like, "Call us, we can help." That's simple, people will pick up the phone and call, like, they don't have to worry if they're calling for the right reasons or the wrong reasons, but they're much more encouraged.
People like whenever you see you deserve representation.
Yeah.
We can help. Here's our number. Simple. You catch them with the hook. You give them an easy way to contact you. Sold.
Yeah, that's why a lot of like billboard for law firms, and sometimes people take it too far, but like that's why a lot of them are just like very streamlined. You are heard. Call us, please. Which is like the subtext for all these little. Please call us before you call anyone else.
So, of all of your audits, do you see more of an uplift whenever people go after, like, hey, I'll get you money? Or if people go after, hey, hire somebody that's gonna do the right thing. Do you see a difference in the way the integrity of the advertisement changes the result?
Actually, yeah. Um. So like the trend in legal marketing, like there are a lot of lead generation campaigns, which are essentially like just imagine you're on Instagram and you see a video, like you're scrolling through the reels and you see a video. And the video is like car accident, like you see that imagery, and then it's like a woman, usually somebody attractive, and then they're like, accidents happen every day. Our law firm can help. Look at this check. And then it's like, literally, look at the money. Like it becomes immediately about money. And those ads are almost always like, we can get you the most money for your injuries, money, 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 money. And those tend to those get a lot of responses, like, not gonna lie, but a lot of responses from people who have lower value cases, like they slipped and fell at a grocery store and they were hurt and they still got 3 weeks of work for emotional injuries, and that's like a kind of case. It's like the Better Call Saul type cases, like contextualize it for somebody who's not like in the silly slip and falls, I guess. Um, but then like most of my clients, in fact, like try not to kind of cater to that like lower tier audience, even though like there's nothing wrong with doing that. Like there are a lot of law firms that go after that lower like tier of audience and just like capture as many as they can. And it becomes like more of a volume type business. But then like most of my clients that I work with, they focus on like a few truisms that are true, like the truisms that are true. Um, so like the insurance company uses AI to deny your claim. That's true. If the insurance company sees you're in a car accident, they'll run the details through an AI. AI will tell them how much to offer you for your accident, for your injuries. And that AI is programmed to give you the lowest amount of money possible. So there's that. That's true. So if you were hurt in any kind of way and it was complicated injuries, it behooves you to hire an attorney because the insurance company isn't looking out for you in that instance, right? Two, the other law firms I just mentioned, these volume firms that want to take as many cases as they can get and just settle them quickly so they can generate business, they can create income for themselves. You know, do you as a client really want to go with them? Is that what you're paying for? No, hire me. And then, I don't want to go through the whole list, but all of the reasons like you would want to hire an attorney, good reasons. And like that aren't exactly having to do with the money of it, like not having to worry about it, saving yourself time, not dealing with the insurance companies. You're already going to physical therapy, you're already going to doctors, you're already missing work and in pain. Like, do you really want to talk to the insurance companies? I wouldn't, you know? Um, so, they're, the law firms that focus on that more not money stuff tend to get like the better quality of clients, whereas the law firms that do the opposite get more cases, but they're lower value cases. So that's how that usually shakes out.
That makes sense. Okay. So whenever you do your audits, have you found something that they didn't disclose right away? And you're like, oh my God, I can't believe they're doing that.
Not that they were aware of, although I did. This is a long time ago, though. This wasn't a recent audit. But they had a bunch of like porn, like on their site or something. Like I don't remember how it came to be. Like I think they were hacked,
Big
and
titted women getting in accidents.
yeah, if it were an ad, I would have been like, "These are great marketing assets." No, I wouldn't have. I'm better at that. I better. Please forgive me. But no, like it was just like videos, I guess, like download. I'm trying to remember more of the context, but I just remember like doing
Hardcore?
yeah, like I just remember doing a site scan and like seeing all these MP4s coming up, and it's like that looks like a porn, and then I click on it, and I'm like, "That's a porn, yeah." That's what it is. And they were like
That's
video
so
after video,
embarrassing.
and
That would
I
be great if the guy was like, yeah, can you put that in our advertising? Yeah.
no, so what used to happen a lot, and I don't think it happens anymore, is like it's malicious SEO. Like a competing law firm would basically hire hackers, like fuck with your site. And so we think that's what
What?
happened. Yeah, it was either that or just
Yes.
well, and I've seen like link bombs like that. And then
Oh
again,
no,
this
that's
was a
not
long
my
time
porn.
ago.
I'm sorry. No, I don't know where that porn came from. That was not there when I left the computer earlier.
So like that was the craziest thing I see. And this poor attorney, like I felt bad because like I had a meeting. I disclosed to him what I found. I was like, I was like, I know you're probably gonna want to get rid of these. So here's a nice Word doc with it, or not, I don't think it was Word, but it was like, here's all of the sites where these are, like, here are all the places on your site where these videos are. Now, they weren't in a place where somebody could like just visit his site and accidentally find them. They're actually like buried. So it wasn't like that embarrassing. Like nobody, and I tried to explain that to him. It's like, nobody would have visited your website and saw these. It's kind of they're on your server, but they weren't public. But he was so embarrassed. Like he pretty much took my advice, ended the meeting. I don't think I ever heard from him again because I'm like trying to think if I heard his name. Like I think he was just that embarrassed. I tried to tell him, it's like I think somebody was just fucking with your site. Like I don't know.
I'm willing to assume that these are not yours.
I'm pretty sure these aren't yours. Like I'm
Oh, that is so awkward. Having to like tell somebody that, be like, yeah, you got porn hacked. Sorry. Yeah.
I mean, it was hilarious to me. I was like, "Oh my god, look at these videos everywhere." But,
Now, honest question. Did you watch all the videos?
no, I did not watch all the videos, Christine. I watched a handful, okay?
That's all
I
I
just have
needed.
a worse answer. I didn't watch load. I watched, like,
I just watched what I needed and then I moved on. June. For
I'm
Tifiny and
verified,
Kristine.
okay?
Oh, that's funny.
Oh,
Oh, that poor guy.
gosh, poor attorney. Alright, so we'll see you guys next week. We'll be talking about something or another, but I'm sure it'll be great. So thanks so much, Christine, and we'll talk to y'all soon.